welcome to Book Club no Kiseki. I am Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Houck.
And I'm Matt Jorgensen.
And today we will be discussing the pre-prologue of Trails in the Sky, the first game in Falcom's Kiseki Mega Series. But before we get started, who the fuck are we, and what the fuck is this show about?
I'm David Bernard Houck.
And that's all you need to know. The man who needs no introduction. So yeah, if you are listening to this, or if you were listening to this in March of 2021, then you are a subscriber to RPG Book Club, our main podcast. So you kind of know who I am, and you've heard Bernard on several episodes, and we have talked about Matt in basically every episode. But this series is one we've been joking about since the beginning of time, and now it's real because there's no such thing as comedy anymore. There's just podcast ideas. And so back when we were planning the podcast, we're like, oh, and then we'll have long cast where we play like trilogies and other things that are directly connected. We were like, but we can't do the Trails series because that would have to be like an 11 season show, and we can't do that. For the record, the main podcast is only up to season 17. So we would have to go almost as long as the entire podcast just to cover it. And so then that's real now. So here we are. I'm going to be doing this for the next couple of years. Hope you enjoy it.
It's perhaps slightly less ill-advised than doing every Tales of game, which...
Yeah.
It's another idea.
Yeah, but at least we could do a random Tales game like we're doing with Tales of Symphonia here for the main podcast here in a second. So like they're separate enough where it's fine, but Kiseki, it's like, well, if you get started on one, it ends on a cliffhanger. And then that one only makes sense if you play the third game. And then that one has two direct sequels. And then the next series directly references those two sequels. So you kind of just have to play all 11 games in release order.
Yeah. And it's pretty fun that those games aren't even technically the complete series. Technically, there's a bigger series, which... Kiseki is a part of. Yeah, so Kiseki, the 12 game series, is game 6 of the Legend of Heroes series, which is game 6 of the Dragon Slayer series. So if we wanted to be technical about it, we could play like, I think the greater Dragon Slayer series has like 47 games in it, because all of the Xanadu games are also Dragon Slayer games. Oh, I didn't know.
Are
that.
they really?
Yeah, I think Dragon Slayer 3 was Xanadu. So yeah, something like that. So it's like, oh, we could play. It's basically every Falcom game that's not Ys in Brandish is a Dragon Slayer game.
But you see, the last Ys game is going to be the Head Psych, where you find out that all of Ys was just a prequel to the Legend of Heroes series, but also the sequel in the alternate dimension stories.
Yeah,
and they're all game 4 of Xenosaga.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that there will be a crossover, because there already is a Falcom Smash Bros. That's Ys versus Trails in the Sky, and it came out for PSP. So there's already been a crossover. So we might as well just do this as the Falcom cast and cover every game that Falcom's ever touched.
Let's start small and just do the entire Kiseki series.
Yeah, let's start small and play the 12 game series.
Casually play a game series that's combined hours is old enough to vote.
Yes. Speaking of the 12 game series, did either of you see the clips from the new game? The one that just came out or is about to come out? But it's the Final Fantasy VII remake of the Kiseki series, and you can just pop in to your tactics-ish battle system
at like with the touch of a button, and otherwise it's an action RPG, and it kind of looks super awesome, and I can't wait to get there in Check's watch 8 years.
That is exactly why I haven't looked at it yet, because I'm going to look at it again in 6 years and in 4 years, and I'm going to be really upset I don't have it yet every time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just avoid the first time.
Yeah. So this series is a Ko-Fi timed exclusive. So if you're listening to this on the main podcast feeds, greetings from the past. I hope nothing bad has happened in the next month. Probably has, because that's just the world we live in right now. So sorry that you had to live through that. And that also means that if you like what you hear today, there are 4 to 5 episodes waiting on you in the Ko-Fi feed. So if you like this, go and donate and then listen to some more. And if you're already here because you've already donated, then thank you. And we hope you like what you hear today. This series is going to basically be a regular RPG book club-ish thing. I have a couple special things planned because Kiseki is very singular in how it does things, but it's basically just going to be focusing on the same game for forever. If you are listening to this and you have no idea what the Kiseki series is, buckle the fuck up, because it's real long, and most of its length comes from just hangout vibes. It's like there's just sick bants from every character all the time forever, and it's not like in a visual novel, it sometimes will like overstay its welcome, where you're just trying to like enter the classroom and there's like a 16-minute scene of them playing cards or whatever the fuck. This one, it's like, oh no, like I'm so excited because Estelle and Joshua are about to go buy some shoes, and I get 15 minutes of them talking about shoes, and they're my best friends, and I just want to listen to it. So it'll be fun, but there's a lot of words in this game, so we will not even come close to being exhaustive when we talk about them, because that would just make us here for 16 years instead of for 8. So
I may decide to.
I think that's. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I might decide if this is anything like Trails of Cold Steel, which I broke the rules and played those games first. They were easier to get to, believe me. Anyway, there's always like a mini story going on with pretty much every NPC throughout the chapters. I might pick one and talk about that one story, because if there is a similar one from Trails of Cold Steel, which is about a little girl and her kitten. It is devastatingly good. I'm just gonna have to live with it. Good. Telling the story, but that's it.
Awesome. So yeah, let's listen to some of the absolutely phenomenal music from this game, and then we will talk about the pre-prologue. So we start the game in a small house late at night where a young girl named Estelle is waiting for her father to come home. She's 10 years old at this point. And he was supposed to be home already, but he's running really, really late. So she's getting really worried and, more importantly, bored. And we start to get our characterization of Estelle as a impulsive, ADHD, awesome girl, and she's great, and I love her. But of course, because we're starting the story now, and she has said, "Where's my dad? He's running late." He comes through the door, and his name is Cassius. in his arms, he's carrying a boy about Estelle's age who has really dark hair and yellow eyes. He is wounded, and Cassius apparently saved him and brought him home. The boy wakes up and he tells Cassius that he has no idea what he's gotten himself into. But before he can say what Cassius has gotten himself into, the ever headstrong Estelle yells at him for yelling and forces them to change the subject. And this is a running theme where characters who obviously know something get interrupted by Estelle being Estelle. And instead of us getting to learn the thing, it stays a mystery because she doesn't care. And it's great.
It's so good.
She asks Joshua what his name is. He doesn't tell us, and it fades to black. And then
my
we get
name is ... We do not get to name him.
No. What we do get is an anime hype video, and it is very hype and also very anime. After the hype video ends, it is now 6 years later, sorry, and Estelle and Joshua are teenagers, and Joshua has kind of slipped in as a part of the family. It's kind of like on Flash where Barry refers to Iris's dad as his dad, but does not refer to Iris as his sister because they're in love, and that would make it weird. So that's kind of what's going on here. Where it's like, oh, both of them refer to Cassius as dad, but don't think too much harder past that point because they're the OTP.
When you said on, it's like on Flash, I was thinking like Homestar Runner.
No, the Flash.
The Flash. Got it.
Yeah. So Estelle wakes up and she goes to find Joshua, who's playing the theme of the game on the harmonica. They banter. It's really good. A lot of this plot summary as we go along will be like, they talk for about 10 minutes. It's really good. And that's about as far as it goes.
They sure do talk.
In this bant, we learn that Estelle is a girl full of pent-up energy who needs to be active all the time, and Joshua is more relaxed and more serious. And we are also introduced to the idea that Estelle loves the Liberlian equivalent of Air Jordans, which is a recurring thread in the series. And, I love it.
Oh, that's so much better than the headcanon. Like, I thought, in my head, I was like, really? She's after, like, the New Balance dad shoe?
No. She loves shoes, and it's great. But so Cassius shows up, and they have breakfast. And at breakfast, we learn that Estelle and Joshua are set to graduate training from the Bracer Guild today and become junior bracers, so they can take on small-level mercenary jobs. Cassius asks Estelle and Joshua to buy him a liberal. It's a bad name. Like, Liberlian makes sense, and like all these other things, but liberal by itself is bad. But liberal. So he asks us to buy a liberal news magazine while we're out, and so we head off to the Bracer Guild. The game doesn't have a world map, so we just walk the physical distance to town, which isn't too far, but I love that about this game. It's like everything's dungeon because there is no world map. It also means that instead of big sweeping world map tunes, we get a bunch of just like hanging out and walking tunes. And there's a lot of good hanging out and walking music in this game. We make our way to the guild inside of town, and we find that Shara is waiting on us. Her name came up a bunch in the banter earlier, but this is her full reveal. Upstairs, we meet her. Her name is Scheherazade, which is a bad translation of Scheherazade, and she's doing tarot, but the readings she's getting aren't making sense, and she's trying to puzzle out what they could mean. And while she's doing that, Estelle and Joshua show up.
And I'm like, oh, the inversion of the Wheel of Fortune. Yeah. Oof.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
So our final day of study today will have a refresher on everything we've learned, and then a practical exam, aka an exposition dump and a tutorial. So we are given the option to learn about orbments, bracers, and the liberal kingdom. The SparkNote version is that orbments are steampunk magic, and they run off of magic quartz called septium. These were invented about 50 years ago, and it's made a very fast industrial revolution. And this fact is way more crucial to the reason this game like has a good story than you would think. Normally, this is the sort of stuff that gets like hand waved in JRPGs, where it's like, oh yeah, and then magic and technology and stuff like Lost Odyssey is like magic is a really big deal there, but like it's not as like, oh yeah, like the world would like explode and change drastically with magic just suddenly happening. And this game goes into the political ramifications of that very deeply. Spoilers for things to pay attention to. But bracers are kind of mercenary private investigator combos, and they are distinct from the government and an international organization. And since they're neutral, they work as mediators between the various nations. They're kind of like the Jedi in the time of the Old Republic, where they try to keep the peace before they have to fight for peace.
They're cops.
Yeah, but they're not government cops, so
they're rogue cops.
They're rogue cops. They're loose cannon cops who live on the edge and don't play by the rules. But Liberal is a country on the Zemurian continent, which is where we'll be spending all of our time over the next 8 years. And Liberal produces lots and lots of septium. And 10 years ago, it thwarted off an invasion by the Erebonian Empire using their orbital airships. And nowadays, things are tense with Erebonia, but there's still like peace between them. It's just like their races stick against each other, basically. After our exposition dump, we move on to the practical portion of the exam and receive our Bracer Notebook, which is where we keep a track of side quests, and it basically has an entire FAQ built into the game it owns. So like if you want to be like, oh, I want such and such special move, you don't need to go to GameFAQs. You can just open your Bracer Notebook and find out what you need to do it, which is super cool. We also are introduced to the bulletin board, which is where we pick up our side quests in the game. And then we go to the Orbital Factory to learn about orbments, which is a very cool, very weird cross between like a sphere grid and an equipment slot and materia. And it is way too complicated to sum up quickly. But basically you slot quartz into your orbment, and the color of the quartz and the organization of the slots on your particular character's orbment dictate how they interact, which dictates the spells and stat bonuses that you get. You start with just a few slots and have to unlock them with the septium chunks that you get from winning mobs, which is called sepith. Sepith and septium and quartz all mean the same goddamn thing. We're back to .hack hours.
Magic rocks.
You can also use sepith to buy quartzes to slot in it. But in my playthrough of the game that I got through like 6 months ago, probably more than that actually, I realized that the shop quartz all suck, and the ones you get from doing side quests are way better. So I never bothered doing that. And like I mentioned, if you're ever curious about like how it all works, it's there in your Bracer Notebook, and it goes into great detail. So I highly recommend checking that out when you play. Shira says that we are ready for the test, so we head off to the sewers, as is required in a JRPG, and we have to retrieve an item from the chest at the end and punch some monsters, so we do that. The battle system is like an evolution of the one that's in Lunar, where it's turn-based, and it's in an instanced battle arena, but you get a lot of like tactics battling type stuff with your positioning and stuff on top of it. And I think it might be my favorite JRPG battle system. It's got the stuff I like from tactics for strategy stuff. It's got FFX style shuffling turn order. It's got Disgaea style area of effect special moves. It's got bonuses on certain turns. You got magic and skills and attacks and limit breaks. It's really, really good. I really, really like it.
I haven't developed a relationship with it yet because I've just like killed some sewer rats and some sewer moth swarms, and that's all I've done with it. And I don't really know if I like it yet, but I probably will.
Yeah, it's got all of my favorite bits in it. At the end of the dungeon, there is a treasure chest with 2 boxes in it. Estelle wants to open the boxes, and Joshua says no, because we might fail if they're opened. So we head out back of the dungeon. Shara checks that we indeed didn't open them and congratulates us on passing the test. So we head back to the guild to report our work, and we get an explanation of how to raise in ranks as bracers, and then we follow Shara upstairs. Upstairs, she again congratulates us on passing, but this time gives us the boxes that we got from the sewer. She implores us to open them, and inside are our junior bracer emblems, which are basically our cop badges, and it's how we show that we're bracers and not just dickweeds with swords. So we are then officially sworn in, but before we can celebrate too much, Shara has to leave. She tells us that we'll be as good of a bracer as our dad if we work hard, and Estelle has a hard time imagining her dad as a great bracer, and Joshua's like, interesting, and then doesn't expound on that, and we head out to get dad's paper and head home. On the way out, we run into some of the kids from town and show off that we're bracers now. One of them swears to be better than us one day and says that he's going to go practice in his, quote, secret base.
He says all this very sexistly.
Oh, yeah. He is a little boy who hates girls a lot. There's a lot of, like... It's this game's politics, like social politics, is weird. Like, there's a lot of characters that are garbage, like this little boy, and then there's like in town there's like a creep that's like constantly peeping on everyone, and it's like sucky, but then like it feels like the game is making fun of those sorts of people and not like, look how awesome this little boy is, isn't it great that he's sexist. It's like Joshua and Estelle chew out all the sexism that's going on, but there sure is a lot of awful people inside of this game world. But we make our way to the general store to buy the newspaper, which always sells out, because the Star Reporter and Star Photographer, who have been doing a running feature for the last 6 months about the Queen's upcoming birthday celebration. So when we buy it, the store owner gives us a recipe book as a gift, because this game has cooking too. It's literally someone took Lunar and Final Fantasy X and a Tales game and just kind of like smooshed them together, and it pulls it off. Cooking, by the way, owns really hard. You should definitely cook, because all of like cooking always gives you a buff as well as the healing. And I basically didn't buy potions my first playthrough. I just cooked, so I would have like, oh, not only did I heal myself, I also have attack up for this turn or whatever, and it's good. As we go to leave, Aina from the Bracer Guild stops us, and she asks us if our dad is at home, because there's a big problem. We ask what's up, and we learn that the kids from earlier, whose names are Luke and Pat, they are in Esmelas Tower, which is crawling with monsters. So Aina wants us to get our dad to go and save them. We're like, there's no time. We're bracers now. We're going to go and get them ourselves. So we make our way through our first real non-tutorial battles and make it to Esmelas Tower. I remember my first time playing through this game, I got incredibly lost because I couldn't remember the name of where I was supposed to go. So I like opened my map, and it's like, do you want to go to Esmelas Tower or like whatever mine? And I'm like, I don't remember. Both of those are things you do at the beginning of a JRPG. So I'll just get lost.
Both of those are places you go in East.
Yes.
Also, I was so ready for a real dungeon. I was ready and raring to go for a real dungeon, but we didn't get that.
Yeah, we do not get that. I wrote in my notes like, oh, this dungeon is pretty cool, but I forget you go to it later in the proper prologue, not the pre-prologue. But this dungeon is good when you get around to it. But inside the tower, we hear Luke and Pat, but we can't find them, so we make our way up to the next level. And when we get there, we are given an option, and we can either run in full speed or to coordinate our run in with Joshua. And this slightly changes the scene, but mostly what it does is it affects the bracer points that you get from turning in the mission. And what blows about that is bracer points means jack diddly squat, except for when you're transferring your save to the second game. And what blows the most is you only get the good transfer if you play a perfect first game, and it's not worth it to give yourself the stress of 100%ing the game correctly just to get a good item in part 2. So just role play it and be like, it would be funny if I did blah, and just don't worry about what's the good one and the bad one, even though there is a good and a bad one.
Good to know.
So we rush in to save the boys, and they are being attacked by a bunch of monsters. And we are, of course, rewarded with the mini boss theme, which owns. And after the fight, Estelle lets her guard down to tease the little boys as she does. And when she does it, a monster comes out of nowhere and like almost gets her. But then Cassius comes out of nowhere and kicks its ass and saves us. And he tells us that we should have followed through and cleared the floor before we let our guard down. But he's not mad. He's just like giving us tips on how to be a better bracer in the future. So the boys and Joshua all fangirl over Cassius because Cassius is Cassius Bright and he is awesome. And he's like one of the best JRPG dads. Like Pankraz is really close, but like those are probably the top 2. Besides, no,
I mean, they both have mustaches. So
they do. I was going to say Kayam would be up there, but no, Kayam is a better grandpa than he is a dad.
Yeah, I mean,
he was kind of a shitty dad.
Yeah, I don't want to give spoilers, but yeah, he did more as a grandpa than as a dad.
Yeah,
we'll say.
Yeah. So back in town, we report to the Bracer Guild, and Ina gives us a letter to bring to Cassius from one of the foreign branches of the guild. And on our way back, Estelle stops Joshua and asks if he thinks that she's cut out to be a bracer. She's afraid that she's going to keep fucking up and Cassius won't be there to save her next time. But Joshua consoles her. He says that her gung-ho attitude and maximum effort that she normally exudes suits her more and is what being a bracer is all about. Sitting back and overthinking things is not like her, and it cheers her up. And I really, really like this scene. This is the scene that like sold me on the game. Because like prior to this, she's spunky JRPG protagonist, and she's like Goku as fuck. Like I can do anything, and blah 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 blah, and I fight with a power pole. But here she's like vulnerable, and she's like I can't stop being a impulsive asshole. Are you sure that I should be doing this? And I really 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 like it.
I think that was the. I think that was the same for me. This was the scene where I was like, "Do I really need to play this first 3 trilogies? These first 3 games in this trilogy before Trails of Cold Steel?" But it was. I seem to recall it was this scene too, where I was like, "Oh no, this is just as good, if not better."
Yeah, it's super duper good. So they make it home, and we give Cassius the letter, and after the kids leave to prepare dinner, Cassius reads it. It's from the Erebonian Empire, and it's super alarming, but he doesn't tell us what it says. Then at dinner, there's some sick bants, and Cassius says that he has to leave on business and will be gone for a while. Joshua asks if it's about the letter, and he's like, no, nothing to worry about. It's just a month-long investigation. And Estelle asks about his huge caseload at the branch that he was talking about this morning, and he's like, well, I transferred them all to you. Your bracers now handle my lightweight. And Estelle is pumped about having the extra responsibility, and Cassius says that if only Lena could see how much Estelle has grown, Lena being their dead mom. Well, her dead mom. Joshua is not actually her brother. That very night important. After Estelle is in bed, Joshua... Yes, very important. That night after Estelle is in bed, Joshua meets with Cassius on the porch. Joshua asks Cassius if something serious is happening, and Cassius is like, I'm not sure. There aren't any overt movements, but covert ones are scarier, so his guard is up. Joshua promises to take care of Estelle, and Cassius asks him if he's going to take back what he promised 5 years ago. Joshua says that it might be the wrong move, but keeping his word is what defines him as a person, so he's not going to change his mind. Cassius says that he understands and that he and Estelle will always be his family. And with that, the prologue starts, which is like, so I guess we're the pre-prologue. It's the forward of the game. But the prologue I thought ended here. And so I was like, oh, we're wrapping up, like finishing the game for the week. And then there was a lot more. So we called it a little early so that we could talk about other shit because it's the first episode. But next week we will finish the prologue. But let's listen to some more of the kick-ass music. Not quite sure what I'm going to pick yet. And then we will talk about some of the extra shit that's in this game, because there's a lot. So even in the pre-prologue, we start to get parts of the immensity that is this game. I didn't mention it earlier, but one thing that's interesting about the Kiseki series is it quote unquote has a quote unquote curse, where trying to get this game localized like got one person stabbed and like ruined the lives of several people. And even after finishing, even after spearheading everything, Brittany, shout outs to Brittany. She's the reason these games came over here. Like after she left when Nisa took over for Cold Steel 3 and 4, she like got super sick and basically had to like start her career over from scratch. And it's like, Jesus Christ, why won't these games just let someone be happy? But and so this game's immensity is like there are 4 like light novels basically in each game that are just like collectibles you can find as a chapter of each light novel, and it's nuts. And so we got our first chapter of that this week.
I didn't find that.
There is a dude in, I think he's in the inn, but don't quote me on that. But he's like, oh, I have too much shit here. You can have some of mine, and he gives you the first one. But if you miss the free places to pick them up, you always can buy them like in the next chapter. So you never have to worry about like not knowing what happened in chapter 5 type thing. But the novel that we got started this week is called Carnelia, and it is a like noir story about this man named Toby, who was from the Erebonian capital. And in chapter 1, he is just chilling reading a news magazine, and he sees the name Anne Selnate, which catches him off guard because he hasn't heard that name since his time working for a man named Matthias in the aftermath of the 100 Days War. But we don't know what happened yet. That goes into chapter 2. They're fairly short, but extremely well written chapters. And then we also got the first issue of the Liberal News. You actually can read it in your inventory if you want to.
What?
And it's mostly just world building this time around. Like basically just it's like, oh, check out the White Magnolia Inn and check out this and check out that, which are all places we go later. It's not any juicy details, but yeah, it's an actual newspaper you can actually read.
Oh my gosh.
On top of that, this game does 2 things that are nuts and bonkers and just add to the immensity of the game, where every single game state that changes. So like you walk into town, you are in entering town the first time game state. And if you talk to every NPC, they have certain dialogue, and then you go and talk to Shara and start your training. You can then go talk to everyone and they'll have different dialogue reflecting on different things. So like constantly you can talk to an NPC, get new dialogue, and it's not just like a new dialogue box. It's usually a scene that plays out. And there's gigantic amounts of these.
We saw a bit of this in Neon Falcom's other game that we played, East 1 and 2, where like in East 2, basically after everything that happened, there was new dialogue from all the NPCs. However, the thing about East 2 is that there's like maybe 24 NPCs and maybe like 5 things happen. Because it's a really short, small game. This game is already like bigger than that.
Yeah. And we're in the pre-prologue. And so I don't remember any particular ones that like stuck out at me besides if you keep talking to the shopkeeper, the one that you end up buying the magazine from, he tells you that like, oh, they won't be here until noon, which is when you have your test, so just come back after the test. But like every time you talk to him, he got like him and Estelle will have something else about shoes to talk about, and it's great. The other thing that they do is every single, as in every last empty chest, instead of saying the chest is empty, it has some joke, and it's always different for every single chest in the entire game.
And they're
and they're all unique, and they're all really good. The one at the bottom of the sewer, if you read, it goes, by reading this chest the second time, you have failed the test. Just kidding. And it's so good. And
it's a bit much.
It's a bit much, but do it every time. Read every chest. They're great. But yeah, this section will probably be much longer as we get into more of the side quests. This is where side quests will happen. There weren't any in the pre-prologue. There are like 13 in every chapter. So any cool side quests will go in the section. Novel shit that we like will go in the section. Things like that are part of the main like game flow, but not necessarily the main plot of the game. But yeah, so let's listen to some more kick-ass music, and then we'll talk about our memorable moments. I've been talking a lot, and Matt has talked infinitesimally less than we have in the past. So, Matt, you can go first.
Okay. So I'm going to get this out of the way. A big part of this series that I appreciate that isn't often... a lot of JRPGs are anime inspired, but this one, like, you can tell even with regular scenes that it's very much they're writing with an anime backdrop in mind. And in particular, and it's every time I've played it, I've loved the transition. And it's been, what, 6 times now that you and I have tried to start this game?
Yes.
I've tried to start this game anyway. Where it transitions from Joshua falling asleep, being put in bed, where it makes that transition to Estelle being in bed, and then she pops up. She's like, oh, I wonder if Joshua's awake, and the harmonica playing. If I close my eyes and think about it, I can almost see it animated. That whole scene right there is just so good. And it's simple, but it nails both of their characters. Like, it very quickly establishes what both of their characters look like at 16 as opposed to 10. And it just chef's kiss.
Yeah,
that's my mom.
Do you have any more? Just that one so far?
Just that one so far. I like Scheherazade. She's funny.
Yeah, she's great.
I didn't realize that her name wasn't Scheherazade. I read it and my mind immediately fixed it into that word. I was like, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, it has like
Scheherazade?
Yeah, Scheherazade with the extra R in it.
So
what about
Charizard.
you, Bernard? Do you have any? Yes.
I don't really have any specific moments. I like how punched up this game's dialogue is. Like every bit of dialogue has some sort of joke or twist on it. It's all, and honestly, I think it's a bit much. And a lot of it I don't like. I'm just sort of like, you could have said that like a normal human instead. But I like that they're trying. Because, I don't know, a lot of JRPGs, a lot of video games in general, people talk in very uninteresting ways.
Yeah.
And writing is not punched up. So I like that this game is punching it up so much. Even if I don't like every instance of it.
Yeah, and it really comes from how like well written the original Japanese is as well, because like listening to it with the voice acting on the Vita version, like I'm not good enough at Japanese to know what they're saying, but I can tell they are also making jokes when the English version is making jokes, and it's like it's not like, say, a Working Designs where the original Japanese was like, the North Cave is blocked with thick ice, you'll need the fire rod. And the English version is like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the North Cave? I don't know. Ask the fire rod seller man or whatever. It's it's very like good. And I think that's the main difference between it's punching up and every other JRPG that has a quote unquote funny script punching up, is you can tell it's like part of the scene and not tacked on.
It almost feels like they write every character as if that character is supposed to be the protagonist and you're just watching. And it's so good.
Yeah.
I do like how Cassius refers to himself in third person as Papa.
I have two of those as my memorable moments.
I've been sitting here trying not to laugh at the mem pictures.
Yes.
So good.
My first one happens right at the beginning, and Cassius just says the best sentence in a JRPG: Papa is sad.
Papa is sad.
Pretty sure the best sentence in an RPG is AFK, as they say, or whatever the fuck happened in .hack.
Yeah, there's a lot of strong contenders for best JRPG sentence in .hack, but this one is very good too. This is a Gabby level sentence.
Yes.
Papa is sad.
Gabby is sad.
Another great one is Cassius, when he walks in at the beginning, he's like, "Hey Estelle, I brought you a present." And she goes, "Why is my present a boy?" And it's like bigger text than normal, like fills up the whole text box. It's so good.
The following sentence is so good, where they childify illegitimate. You read it, you're like, that doesn't make sense until like, you say it out loud phonetically. You're like, oh.
Yeah. She's like, Dad, is this one of your illegitimate kids or whatever? It's so good. Let's see. That one's not as good in retrospect. So a lot of the NPCs in this game, as I mentioned earlier, they're creeps and they're weird. And there is a 6-year-old girl that constantly speaks in nonsense of a vaguely romance anime drivel. One of my favorite ones she says is, "Isn't it romantic that you two lovers are bracers who stand for justice?"
Oh yeah, I talked to her. And Estelle and Joshua are just like, what the fuck?
It's so good. And then my last one is when Luke and Pat are being ambushed by the monsters. Their brave face that they put on is just, you monsters, go somewhere else. Which is great.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's so good.
I remembered something.
We have Bernard.
I like when Joshua and Cassius are talking, and Cassius is like, "Hey, you want some of this alcohol that I'm drinking?" And Joshua's like, "Oh no, that would be illegal." Like, no, I'm not allowed.
Right.
Like, oh my god. He says don't offer alcohol to minors, I believe is his exact words.
Yes. But yeah, that's about all I have. If anybody else has anything else to add before we finish up.
I have lots of things I want to add, but they would be spoilers now that I'm thinking about it, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
No spoilers.
Yeah, I will try and keep spoilers to a minimum, and just like, if I do any spoiler things, it's like, oh hey, I didn't pay attention to any of this Erebonius stuff because I didn't care, but it turned out to be important and came up later. So pay attention to those sorts of things.
You know what I will say though? As the game, it's not just this game or this series that the technology, particularly the orbment, plays an important role in the story. So moving forward, don't ignore that part. It is really cool, and not just to a big nerd like me who likes mechanics. Like it's normal nerd cool.
You know what's not cool? The word orbiment.
Oh yeah, that's real
so bad.
There should be another vowel. I don't know what vowel it would be, like orbament or orbement, orbiment, orbament. Something should be there.
Just called it orb.
Just call it orb.
Just orbs.
If you would have just called it orb, it would have been speedrun at GDQ by now. Like you really just are limiting your audience by not just calling it orb.
When my partner and I were playing this game, we just called it the Marble Collection. It led to some very confusing situations. Yeah, they're marbles. That's all. It's just magic marbles.
Yeah, magic marbles. But yeah, that will do it for the week. If you like what you hear and you are not already subscribed on our Ko-Fi, you should do that. And then you can get these episodes a month before the rest of the world, and you can hang out with us and all that jazz. Our Ko-Fi's URL, as Matt can see in my notes, I wrote to write an outro and I did not do it, so apologies. But our Ko-Fi is at www.rpgbook.club, and there you can find links to this show, as well as we have merch, we have polls so you can vote on our next main series game. We have links to our Discord where you can come and hang out with us. There is not currently, but there will by the time that anyone hears this, be a subscriber only channel inside of the Discord where you can talk about this particular show. So come and hang out and chill with us. But for Book Club no Kiseki, I have been Sam Allman.
I have been David Bernard Hauk.
And I have been Matt Jorgensen.
Adios, everybody. I'm sure I will have a better sign-off. That's actually a really good one. Adios,
later,
everybody.
taters.
Adios, amigos.
Bye.